Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Real Franchise. This video series is designed to deliver real information, real answers and real insights into franchising. The series is brought to you by James Home Services Australia. I'm the CEO and Justin is one of our owners and our head of new businesses. Together in this series, we tackle all of the big topics, unscripted, unplanned and unfiltered. No sales, no fluff. We just give you information straight up. Today's topic is it's a buzzword right now. It has emerged at the forefront of socials as a total buzz concept. It is ethical sales. Now, in our network, when you inquire to join our network, it's an information process. We will always refer to it as an information process. But if we're being really hardcore about it, you are buying a product and a service from us. So it is a sales process that we take you through. So with that context in mind, Justin, we're going to lead off with the biggest question first. As always, let's dive in. Please tell us, what on earth is ethical sales?
Ethical sales is not just selling ice to an Eskimo. Ethical sales is you and I often talk about laws of exchange. It's being in what we call the right laws of exchange. Can what I have, my product, genuinely help and assist this person? And if not, I'm prepared to forego that sale because it's not right for them, right? And this is something we have. Well, I know so we've always, in my view, practiced ethical sales, but we have got more and more diligent on that and more processes, which we'll talk about in this video, to ensure that if this business isn't right or if it's just not the right time, we will tell you that. And in fact, I'll be honest, I tell people that more than, yes, join the team.
Yep.
Right? And usually it's, hey, look, I think you'll be great for the team, but just not right now. We'll dive into that in this discussion as to why we say that. But ethical sales is, that classic touche, he can sell ice to an Eskimo. Well, the Eskimo doesn't need ice. You take it, you're not acting
the wrong
ethically.
Thing to do.
You're robbing him. You're not acting ethically, taking money off the poor Eskimo when he doesn't need ice.
Yeah, exactly. For me, ethical sales comes down to we have a responsibility, and that is not just to sell a product because we have a product to sell and we know our product works, we back it, we know that it works. But it comes down to a level of responsibility. It does work, but it's not ideal for everyone because everyone comes to us with a slightly different current situation, slightly different or sometimes wildly different goals for what they're hoping to achieve. And in my opinion, practicing ethical sales is about making a real and genuine assessment about whether what we offer can legitimately help that person to achieve what they want. And if it can't, so for example, people are often coming to us with help to start a business because they are looking for more flexibility with their time. They're looking to get out of the daily 9-to-5 grind with an hour commute each way into the city for work. They're wanting to kick that to the curb because it eats into family time. They're looking for, flexibility in how they schedule their day. So, the ability to work their work around their life.
Amen.
And so I really view ethical sales as us asking lots of questions when someone first inquires to genuinely understand what their current circumstances are and what their ideal future state is.
Yep.
And if we don't think that starting a business with us can genuinely help get them further toward their ideal future state, then it's not the right thing for us to do to have them progress in our system and sell us to the Eskimo, so to speak. So I want to touch on this for a minute, Justin. it's a buzzword right now, right? It's coming back in. I am listening. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always interested in sort of what's being talked about in franchising, in sales, in HR, all of that stuff. That's my jam. That's my space. And that's where my role sits. And I have a responsibility to be across what's happening in these spaces too. And I have really noticed in the last few months alone, a massive acceleration of content creators, influencers in that sales space, beginning to talk about ethical sales.
Mm.
Is this a new concept, Justin?
It's not a new concept, not at all. And like speaking from our network, I've been in this network for 15 years, and I think our network has always thought we've done ethical sales, but I think organisations now are getting more into the detail and weeds to be I'll give a specific, talking about our network. When I first joined, and I was involved in sales from day one in James, it was, we have a proven system, we have a great system. Anyone can join our business, and if they use our system, it will work for them, right? If they use our system, it will work. And so, people would buy a business up front for whatever it was back then, 30, 40,000. And, in hindsight, so we've got now, since we've taken over ownership and we've refined this a lot, particularly in the last 2 years, we really get into the weeds, as you said, find out what they're looking for, what they really want. Because I have cases, my very next phone call after this video is to a lovely couple who've been through this process. We've sat down with them and I've got them, and we've done personal budgets, right? And he's got great experience and I think has great potential. So when old James would have got a start. However, now that we've got their personal budgets and working through that, I know from his budget, because he'll have to quit work to go do training, 2 weeks of training with no income, he'll come out of training with no money to pay rent, like be out of cash. So ethical sales is going, in the old days, it would have been, you'll be great, let's do it, follow the system. Ethical sales finds out a bit more information and goes, hey, I think you'll be great, but we need to get a bit more in savings so that, you are starting a new business, you've got a family, you've got responsibilities, you've got financial commitments. And we have developed tools now so we can work out, based on your living costs, exactly how much money we believe you need to have in savings to minimise at all possible the risk of running out of cash, right? So if you have the worst possible start income-wise, we know you've got enough to get by X number of weeks.
Yep. I've got a really great practical example of where this kind of situation happened when I was doing your role a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And a gentleman had made an inquiry, Melbourne-based, and I called him for that, that first call where we just kind of introduce ourselves, have a little bit of a chat about what they're looking for. And I started in that first call, we really focus on asking questions to better understand what that person's current situation is. And the reason we do it is to try and figure out if we can genuinely help or whether this is not going to be a fit. What we're looking for is fit. And so we are asking questions that might feel kind of odd, but it's us trying to figure out whether this might even be a fit. And so I was asking him these questions, what's your current working situation and, what's your family situation? You're my age. Do you have a young family? What are your commitments there? And he started to throw off some subtle signals to me in his answers that indicated that he might not have a full-time commitment available. So, for example, he was asking me, hey, can you do after work jobs, like after hours jobs? And can you build a business on the weekend? And, what if I did early morning work and late afternoon work? And so for us, that's a massive signal that what he's trying to do is figure out whether he can keep his full-time job so that he's got that stable cash flow. And he's trying to figure out if he can build this on the side, right? And he was a great guy, right? He ticked all of the boxes for what we look for an ideal candidate. He had loads of drive, great communicator, really professional, asked very astute questions, had clearly done his research, sounded really sound, exactly the type of person that we get really excited about because he's the type of person we know this can work for. But I just had a couple of little alarm bells going off, hey, I'm not sure that this is actually going to work for him. So he was so keen, however, I did book to do an information session with him, right? And I thought, now normally what our information session is that we've built that understanding of the person in the first call. So the information session is we ask a few more questions and we dive in, but then the information session is, okay, spotlight's on us. Now you ask us all the questions, you drive it, and you need to get from us the information you need, right? But I threw that out the window. I got on the information session call with this guy and I said, hey, I've really been thinking about our call for the last 36 hours since we first spoke. I just really want to ask you some more questions because I'm just not sure that we're right for you. So we spent another 20 minutes talking about current situation and I was just really direct. And I was like, hey, it kind of sounds like you're trying to build this on the side. Is there a financial reason why you can't leave your job? What's your current financial position? Now, we kind of don't dive into that detail until a little bit later, but I just had those warning bells. It eventuates out that he was a perfect fit, except that he really did just want to build this on the side. Now, you and I know that this is not the kind of thing you can build on the side. It needs a full-time focus. It needs a full-time commitment. And it was absolutely tearing me apart because he was such a great guy. And I ended that call in a really honest note and saying, hey, look, I've just got to be honest. I just don't think that this is the right thing for you to do. Not right now. And so we went down the path of talking about a savings plan and the kind of money that he might have to have aside first. And so some other strategies in the meantime, some other ways that he can find a second job, supplementary job that would pay after hours, put that money aside, build your savings plan, come back to us because you're the type of person we look for. So I said no. I said no to our ideal candidate because it wasn't the right time for him.
Yes.
Right? Everything worked for us. I know that our system could work, but I know that we would put him under undue financial stress. And I know that that would impact his family. And I'm not prepared to do that. You're not prepared to do that. We have a very strong stance on this. We're not prepared to do that. He ended the call by saying, thank you. I've spoken now to 4 of your competitors, all of which have been ready to jump straight into whatever the next step is on onboarding me. Yeah. And he's like, you're the first one who's been honest. He said, and I am so appreciative because I hadn't looked at it from your perspective. I knew I was nervous for a reason, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And you've helped me to identify why I felt nervous, which is valid. And now I see I need to go away and do A, B, and C before I'm ready to do this. And he was so appreciative. And I was almost crying, hanging up the phone because he was so perfect. But it wasn't the right thing to do. That is ethical sales. And that is not a new concept to us. James has been doing it for decades, but specifically, we have really gotten strict on this since you and your business partner took over this network 5 years ago. This for us is business as usual. It's no buzzword for us. Yeah. It's business as usual.
And I think diving into it, just to show financially another reason why we do it, right? In other business models, other franchises, it's pay up front.
Yeah.
And so the temptation from a sales perspective is, because we have this all the time, people have the money to pay up front and, oh, wow, it's a big chunk of money that we can make. Yeah, we've made our money, all the best. Hope you do well in our network. Mm. And inside that salesperson might be thinking, oh, well, I don't know how they're going to go, right? That's unethical sales in my view.
Yeah.
Our whole business model under the subscription, so we don't make money from selling a franchise for a long time. You know, I think it's a year plus before we're in front. So it's not, we're after a long-term success. You know, we have a fee structure that's a percentage. We talk about it in other videos. So we're only going to make money if this person is successful.
Yep.
So what I love about our business model and the subscription model, it supports ethical sales in that, you know, as a salesperson myself, the temptation can be what we call in sales terms, the next chicken dinner, right? They talk about sales that are just focused on the sale itself. You're chasing the next chicken dinner. That's not us at all.
It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
In our face.
We spend, someone gives us $1,000 under a subscription. What it costs us, I think, roughly $15K to set people up, train them, all the rest of it. And then they start. We're behind the 8 ball, 14 grand. If it doesn't work, it's not
That's
good for
on
us.
us. Yeah, that's right. And so, you know, in most networks where it's a pay up front model, they get that hit up front. And so there's no, I mean, I don't want to be, this is not about trying to say that every other network out there is acting unethically. That's not what this is about. It's just to try and point out that our model specifically, it really doesn't reward us for making a poor decision, right?
Yes.
We only get rewarded long term, and we only get rewarded when we make a good decision that's great for both parties, not just us, but genuinely for the business owner as well. And when you pair that great decision with our support, actually helps them to build a successful business. Those two things have to be present for at least 12 to 18 months before we actually start to recoup what it is that we've spent just on that initial outlay. And so, frankly, if you're of a business mind, you're probably listening to this going, you guys are absolutely nuts. How are you profitable and sustainable? Well, because we're getting it right. Because we're making good decisions, we're getting the right kind of people who really fit with our ethos, and then our support is second to none. And we back those franchise business owners in our network, and we help them grow successful businesses fast. And that's how we are sustainable, because what we're doing genuinely works. We're not sustainable because we get that hit up front and then whatever happens later happens, and that's on the business owner. That's not how our model works. We are very much set up that the model is us walking the walk, talking the talk, putting our money very literally where our mouth is, and backing our system to do the right thing by the business owner. And that, for me, is the epitome of ethical sales. When your whole model only rewards an ethical sale, for me, that's walking the walk. And I really, really am proud that that's how we operate in this industry, because there's so much criticism. It's really easy for a lot of people to criticize franchising. You know, there's several industries that just, you know, they're the butt of a lot of criticism, and we're one of them. And I've become very used to that. So it's really nice to be able to, you know, you hear that criticism on a daily basis, and it's impossible not to, you know, hear it and take it on board. But then I remind myself how we actually have set this network up. And I remind myself that we can't operate if we're not doing this ethically.
Yep.
So I want to talk just for a little bit. I want to switch gears because we've talked very kind of philosophical there for a minute. I want to switch gears and talk really practical, right? So how do we practice ethical sales? We've talked already about we ask a lot of questions so we genuinely understand what someone's goals are. And then we are only prepared to continue in the process with them if we actually think that what we do in helping people start businesses can help them achieve those goals. Then there's a whole nother layer of detail to this. Now, you touched on it earlier. I want to go back to it and talk about it in more detail. We have a break-even point that we calculate, and we have a cash position tool that we use to guide our decision-making on financial sustainability of the incoming business owner. Can you talk us through what both of those are and how you use them to guide your decision-making?
Yeah. So we get a fair way down the process before we do this so that the individual is confident this is what they want to do, right? Because sometimes I find people are very hesitant to, you know, after a first phone call to give me their personal family budget and their assets and liabilities. It's like, whoa, not going there yet. I want to know more about James. So we take them through that process. Like, if you inquire, you're going to get to meet other business owners. You get people's phone numbers. You can ring anyone. We do a lot of Zoom meetings so you can talk face to face so that you can do your research. So that's paramount. We do that. Then when you come back to me and go, hey, Justin, we'd love to join the team, we send you an application that helps us work through these criteria. We've talked about before. We've got to get a clean police check to know that, those sort of things. And there's two attachments. One is an assets and liabilities. So to get the assets and liabilities, the individual must fill it, and a personal budget. And then what we do is when that comes back to me, we feed it into this cash tool, which goes, okay, we've got this much in resources. This is what it costs you to live each week. If you join us, this is going to be a weekly subscription fee. So that's an extra cost onto your budget and a weekly subscription fee. So that then you're going to need this much each week in expenses to stay afloat, to keep the family, the roof over your head, everything operating. You've got this behind you and you've got this ongoing income. A spouse might still be in the job, or they might be getting various government payments or income from other sources. So you've got this much income coming in. So that means even if you don't get a single job, how many weeks can you survive? And that's what we look at. How many weeks can you survive? Yes, we have an income guarantee that kicks in week 3 of operating your business and all of that. But for the sake of this exercise, let's forget about that. Let's just have a look at how long can you survive with zero income?
Yeah. It's about generating what we call your break even, which is basically, your other household income that will continue from a spouse or perhaps, government family payments, those sorts of things. Income that will continue minus what it costs you to live every week. And then we get this number. And it's, what money each week, in addition to that continuing income, are you going to need this business to generate in order to cover your life expenses, basically? And so, our benchmark is kind of a little bit different. We kind of have no one set number for what, we need in terms of a week's survival. We have kind of a range, and we take it on a case-by-case basis. If you're someone who has a very small break even, i.e. you only need a few $100 extra per week and you're covering all your expenses, then we would feel more comfortable because we know that in a few weeks we can get you there pretty easily if you're following our system, right? If your break even is a lot higher, then we're looking for a little bit more survival because we know that it's going to take us a little bit longer to get you there. So it's a range, right? We don't have one definitive answer. And the reason we also don't have one definitive answer is that everybody's circumstances are different. And the whole thing about ethical sales is that you're looking at everybody through a lens of their own circumstances, not one set of rules. So we have guidelines, we have 30 years of experience of doing this, but it's important to us that we take every single person on a case-by-case basis and we genuinely work with them to better understand their position before we make a decision. But if, in our opinion, it's a bit too skinny, you don't have many weeks up your sleeve, then we will defer you. So we will say it's a no, but it's not a no forever. It's a no for now. And then what we do is we start talking about a savings plan. And we say, if you're really serious about this, then this is just a no for now. And let's talk about a pathway that gets you to the kind of money that you need to have set aside in savings, where we would feel comfortable that this is now the right decision and the right time for both parties. So, Justin, you literally will sit down with people and work out a savings plan, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I catch up every month just to see how they're going with it and help them keep on track and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Now, we've spoken a lot about finance as one of the areas. There's a couple of other key areas that I see come up a lot where we have a lot of people across this country keen as mustard to join us. Great people, but communication skills, English skills.
Yeah.
not really there. Like recently come to this country starting a new life. And the challenge with our business is it's people serving people. So, you've got to have a high level of communication ability in English because, you're going to get the leads are going to come directly to you. If you're the business owner, you have to call that customer. You have to make a time to go see that customer to do a quote. You got to do the quote, find out exactly what the customer wants. All of that has to happen and has to happen in English. And so one of the tough ones is, having to say to people who are so keen, look, we had one, as you know, just recently that was so keen to start, and we just had to say, look, I just don't think it's going to work for you just yet. Work on those skills, that communication side, because that individual, was fine on the finance side, was ticked all those boxes, and maybe in other networks will get a start, but I can't see it working for them. And so that's a tough decision for us because we're saying goodbye to that opportunity, hopefully not forever, but it's the right thing to do because they won't succeed in a business like this.
And that's not just us, in our gut going, oh, it's not right, we don't think it's going to work. That's us basing this decision on our experience, which is that when we have started people with and we have, frankly, such a high proportion of our network is English as a second language. And I take my hat off to anyone who can start a business in their second, third, or fourth language. And we have so many people who do it and do it successfully. But what we have learned is that when English is your second or other language, but you're still actively learning the language, it can be really, really challenging for you to pick up some of those nuances when you're communicating with people, particularly in a negotiation to lock in a job situation. That's where we find that people struggle the most.
Yes.
And if you can't lock in those jobs, then you can't make an income. And so, our guidance to people around this, needing a high level of communication skill is very much based on our experience, is that where we have seen people really struggle in the past in our network is in that objection handling, communication, negotiation space when they're working face-to-face with a client trying to lock in a job. Now, I just want to also say, we've been talking about this as English as a second language. This equally applies where English is a first language. We absolutely have situations where even when English is the natural language, the communication skills are just not quite there from hey, you're going to have to rely on these skills in your business to make money. And so it doesn't matter what your background is, what your story is, what your color is. It's communication skills that we're looking at, not who you are or where you've come from. I just want to pop that in there and make sure that it's very much it's a skill-based decision on our part. And we'll be very honest with you. It's not a flat no. Again, like the finance thing, it's a, hey, if we're honest, we feel really nervous for you because of X, but hey, there are lots of ways that you can build your skills in those areas. And we help them with courses or what places they can go and additional things they can do to build those skills. And then we are an open door. Always come back, touch base with us, check in with us. If you really want this, go do that work and then come back to us ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many, I just want people to understand it's not just finance, this whole ethical sales. It's, there's so many different things that we look at through this process. And we literally have a form that I fill in that we go through and make sure that, another area is if people, no, I won't use a computer. Yeah. And it's well, we're maybe not the right network because we're actually paperless. Everything is done on a computer. Everything comes through on computer, so you don't have to be a computer geek. I'm terrible on computers, but you need to know how to turn one around and navigate around a computer because your business is going to be operating.
Yeah. I think for us, ethical sales is just being about really honest in areas that we see people struggle in their businesses in our network, and just like kind of bringing that to the forefront with potential inquirers and saying, hey, just so you know, we've spent several weeks now getting to know you, and vice versa. And, our observation is that, these are the areas that you might struggle in our network. And this is forming part of our decision. How do you feel about that? And so often it also comes down to attitude. We did have somebody about 18 months ago in Victoria who came to us with very little computer skills, right? Yes. And you said to him, you said, hey, I just need to be really honest. Like, we run based on a computer. And if you, I need you to demonstrate to us that you've got a willingness to actually learn and use a computer to run your business. And this guy, totally to his credit, was like, Justin, challenge accepted. And he went away, he learned computers, he can operate an email address where he couldn't, he can navigate around a computer where he couldn't before. He downloaded a typing app and taught himself how to type. And it was a beautiful turnaround to watch, because also I will say this guy was a little older, and it was so nice because he was like, no, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna learn this. I want a business. And if that means that I've got to bridge this skill gap, I'm going to do it because that's what I want. And he darn well did. He went away and he put the effort in, and now he's running a business in our network and he's using the computer system. He's got lots of help from his wife and his son, which is also a great thing. We also take that into consideration. Do you have support in your immediate family, in your immediate network? Because if you've got support, then you've got support from them, you've got support from us, and between the two sides, we can teach you what you need to know. So you're right. There's so many things that we think about. And it's also 9 times out of 10, it comes down to someone's attitude. And if their attitude is, okay, if that's what I need to do to get where I want to get to, I'm willing. As long as you guys show me the way, I'm willing. We are always looking for attitude. And if your attitude is willingness, one of give it a go, one of I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to work at this because this is what I want, I'm committed to this, you're our person. You're our type of people. That's what we're looking for.
We have so many starters, and I would say, so many starters in our network who it's been 6 to 12, even 18 months at times from their first conversation with me until they've started.
Yeah.
Because there's, things like that. We've got a great guy starting in Newcastle shortly in end of August. I was just looking yesterday. We first spoke first week of January, and because of a couple of things he needed to get in place, and that's ethical sales. If we had started this individual earlier, it would have been extremely difficult.
Yep.
And may not have been successful.
Yep.
But now got all that stuff in place, ready and raring to go.
Yep.
And I'm sure he'll do great.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've talked about a lot of things. I think that's a great place to wrap this video. We've talked about ethical sales being business as usual for us. We've talked about it being a real balance of making sure that we're finding people that are the right fit for our network, who genuinely, based on our experience, are going to have a really good chance at being successful in our network, who have the right attitude, whose goals and what they want to achieve through business ownership match what we've seen people do in our network, and also making sure that that financial piece of the puzzle stacks up and that we're really only saying yes if it's financially responsible for us to do so, as well as all of those other things. So it's a great place to leave this video. We've covered an awful lot of ground. I hope that you've hung in there if you're listening. And I really hope that I hope that if you're listening because you're thinking about this, that it's kind of given you an opportunity to take a deep breath and go, oh, okay, these guys are not just about making a sale. These guys are genuinely going to work with me to make sure this is a good choice for both parties, because that really, in a nutshell, is what this is about.
Yep.
So let's leave it there. I hope that you can join us again very soon for the next episode of The Real Franchise.